What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're back in the Nissan GTR. I really haven't driven this car much in the last 3 weeks. I was out of town for a whole week when you saw all the review videos that Mike was filming. And then before that, we were tuning the Supra, doing so much to that. And this car was just sitting in the garage on the battery tender. But I haven't really driven this car much, and now that I'm back in it, the first time I drove it was the other day, obviously getting the new wheels, ceramic coated, and then installed. And first initial impressions really driving this car after not driving it and then driving the tuned Supra so much. I put 700 miles on the Supra already, and I put maybe 300 miles on this in the last month. So I have not put a lot of miles on this car, I haven't driven it much. First initial impressions getting back in this car, it just did not feel nearly as fast as the Supra. The Supra just has so much bottom end torque and that usable power that you feel so instantly every time you hit the gas pedal that it just feels like a faster car. Now we've raced the two cars back to back, and down low, yeah, the Supra takes off. It just has that power. This car, you need more space to really wring out the engine and use the top end horsepower that the GTR has. So with this Supra, it just feels like a faster car, and with the tuning, the sounds, everything that it does now, the fun factor and performance levels of the GTR versus the Supra, they're on the same level now. The Supra has so much fun factor to it that is it making this car now just boring and not as exciting as it used to be, because the Supra is just as fast under 100 miles an hour. And we're going to talk about that today, but the Supra definitely has a lot to offer compared to the GTR, given that it's a newer car. It has all the technology in it, so many things that this car doesn't do, and yet the fun factor is still very similar. So with all that said, if we talk about the cost now with the two cars, new for new, the Supra is half the cost. You're talking about a $58,000 car out the door. That's how much I paid for my car 10 months ago. Now you're talking more like the low 50s out the door, just because the 2020s are a pretty good discount. You can get them for a heck of a steal. The GTR, on the other hand, brand new, I believe is 113 grand for a 2020. My car was used. I bought it as a 4-year-old car for $67,000. So still costs 10 grand more than the Supra. And as far as the mods go, this is 10 grand in mods. The Supra, you're talking about $25,000 to $3,000 with mods. So for pricing goes, the Supra is a bargain, and the fact that the fun factor is literally the same. It's crazy how much fun factor the Supra now has that it's tuned. It has completely changed it. So we're going to drive the GTR on some fun roads, stretch its legs again, get back into the vibe of driving this, because they are so different feeling, and see if it's lost anything given that it's an older car, and is it still as fun? So if the pricing is half the price for a Supra, why would you buy the GTR if for half the price you can get a brand new car with all the technology, all the refinements, and for just a couple grand in mods you can get the same fun factor, if not more fun factor, than a GTR. So what I'm finding is, back driving the GTR now that I'm stretching its legs again, kind of getting back used to it, since it's been many weeks without really understanding the car anymore, since I'm so used to the Supra, I'm finding that they are such different cars that you need to drive them in a completely different way. Like right now, we're going 50 miles an hour. If I go down to third gear and floor it took about a second for the turbo to really kick in. The Supra, on the other hand, instantly, if I dropped it a few gears, we're gone. There's so much turbo power. And being rear-wheel drive versus all-wheel drive, that's a really big difference I'm noticing between the two cars. With this car, it just goes wherever you want to go. With the Supra, on the other hand, given its rear-wheel drive, when you floor it, the rear end can get a little squirrely, and just the way the car feels is completely different, being that it's only driven by the rear instead of the whole car driving itself, given all-wheel drive. So it's a really different feeling going between the two cars. And then as far as the age goes, this car technically is like a decade old. 2008, 2009 is when this first started hitting the roads, and they didn't exactly change the car too much over the years. They did a lot of updates and refinements and a few minor things here and there over the years on the GTR, and they made the transmission better, suspension better, things like that. But it's fundamentally a well over a decade old car, and when you drive it, you can feel that old school feeling to it. The transmission does feel slower in this car. Of course, it's pretty clunky compared to that lightning quick and very smooth 8-speed you get in a Supra. But when you do drive this, it kind of takes you back to older school cars and how mechanical and raw this car feels. I'm getting spoiled with a modern car where everything is perfect. There's nothing weird about the Supra. It is a perfect car in the sense of everything always works exactly the same way. It doesn't change. This car sometimes is smoother than other times, sometimes it's clunkier than others. It's a car that keeps you on your toes just because it's not refined at all. And that's one thing that I really like about older cars. Not crazy old cars, of course, but kind of this technology, kind of yesterday's technology. It just gives you a different mechanical feeling of sports car that makes you appreciate how it's put together, the race car feeling of it. It loses the precision, the refinements. Instead, it gives you that crazy rawness that really just keeps you on your toes when you're driving it. Wow, like right there, man, the all-wheel drive, it just pulls you around. So is this car losing the fun factor now that the Supra is tuned? It did for a week, and then I got back used to what this car has to offer. There's so many differences between the two cars that it's just one heck of a car. And as far as the refinements go, this car, like I said, doesn't have the refinements, and when you're driving in it, it's very normal. There's a navigation system and a backup camera, and that's it. The Supra, I'm used to the radar, adaptive cruise control, the comfortable quiet ride. This car is noisy. I'm glad I have the active exhaust because with it on, there's a lot more drone in it. May not come up on camera, but I'm keeping it off right now just for the sake of audio. But with the Supra, I do love how it can tone down to a completely normal car. A lot of you guys have called me out for calling it a Toyota Camry, but when the Supra's in normal mode, it really is a Toyota Camry. It's nothing special. It's nothing out of the ordinary. With the GTR, it's Camry mode. It doesn't have Toyota Camry mode. This thing is always a race car on the streets, and it can tone down just enough. Like right now I'm in comfort mode suspension, tone down just enough to absorb the bumps to where you're not breaking your back. But when you put it in race mode and then everything else doesn't change, it's always still very raw. The car is still a race car on the roads, while the Supra can turn into a normal car like a Camry. But then with the Supra, the differences between normal and sport mode are astronomically different, because in sport mode and everything, suspension's hard, the steering's tight, the engine is way more responsive, the instant power from the 560 wheel torque, you still got that no matter what mode you're in, and then all the crazy turbo noises and the rear wheel drive and everything. It just is a very lively car when it's in sport mode and when you're shifting by yourself. And I like how with that transmission, everything is super quick, lightning fast, everything is just insane. With the GTR, you can feel the differences in technology and how it's a little bit slower certain times. And then this one kind of kicks you in the back because of the actual gear change. The Supra probably artificially kicks you in the back just because of the tuning. It makes the shift a little harder. So you can definitely tell how the refinements have changed the Supra versus how this car doesn't have any refinements. And it definitely makes them both completely different cars, but still having a lot of fun factor. So with the GTR, how is this car fun, and when do you get the fun out of it? This car is more fun when you're in the higher revs. Like, use the engine in this car, really bring it out, get up to redline. That's when this car comes alive. The shifts are lightning quick when you're at redline. The Supra, the shifts are always quick just because it's a modern automatic. This car, I think it changes depending on how you're driving. If you're driving the GTR normal and slow, it's going to feel sluggish and slow. It's a race car on the road, and it's not designed to be driven normally for the most part. With this car, when you're on it, when you're ripping through gears, high RPM, high speeds, full throttle, that's when the car becomes a precise race car, and you can feel that pedigree in this thing. And that's what I don't know, it's crazy going between the two cars now. And when I first bought the Supra, I said that these two cars complemented each other very well. And now that the Supra is all tuned up and has this type of performance, they complement each other even better. Man. And now that I'm getting back used to a car where you need to be in the higher revs to feel the power, this car feels really fast. I still need to do a rematch with this, down a gear and using rolling launch, because after doing that a few times, I think this thing actually is going to smoke the Supra. So I think you just have to drive the cars completely differently to get the fun factor out of them. So overall though, I am super happy with how both cars are kind of turning out. I think this thing needs tuning, a custom tuning. I want to do a fuel pump before I do that. That way we can really maximize it and reliably crank up some power. So I'm excited to see how much better this can get. And from what I've seen, if I do go EcuTech for tuning on the GTR, the transmission's going to get a nice tune as well and smooth out as well. So I think this car is going to be a step above where it is now once I do custom tuning. And then I'll have to, of course, rematch the cars together, really feel out how each car performs. But at the current state, given how both cars are performing, I'm loving how they each have that fun factor. Like literally the Supra is on par with this as far as the fun. And being that it has a lot more usable torque down low, most of the time, 90% of the time, you're not going 100 miles an hour. I know some people want to think they're doing that every day. No, you're not. You're driving to the grocery store every day. But with the Supra, under 100 is when it is so fast. No matter when you touch the gas pedal, you're gone, and it's squirrely because it's got rear-wheel drive. This car comes alive after 100 miles an hour, but if you drive it right, it comes alive under that as well. So I'm liking how they each have crazy fun factor, crazy power, and then being that this is that old school race car on the road feeling, it gives it a completely different feeling than a modern, extremely refined European sports car that the Supra is. So I'm loving both cars now, and now that I've driven this a few hundred miles, after all the mileage and weeks driving the Supra, I'm appreciating this once again. Driving this around town though is still nowhere near as nice as the Supra because it's so clunky and just it's not a good daily in that sense comparing it to the Supra. But I don't know, I just want to make a quick update kind of talking about how I feel with this car now that the Supra is tuned. I still love this car, this is still the baby, and at this point I don't really want to sell either car anytime soon. I'm definitely looking end of next year, 2021 is when I would consider swapping something for something else, but in the meantime neither car is going anywhere anytime soon because they just have so much fun factor to offer. And now that the Supra is tuned and has a ton of power, it brings me that same fun that the GTR can bring me, and yet it also has that refinements of a good daily. So both cars are insane. I would highly recommend, if you're in the market for a really cool sports car, check out both the cars, the new Supra or a used GTR. If I only could pick one, I would still go for a used GTR just because this is a league above. This starts off as a six-figure supercar. The Supra starts off as a $50,000 nice sports car. So this hands down is a step above as far as what it is, but for half the price, new for new, you can get the Supra and have just as much fun as a nice GTR. So they're both great. I would consider a used GTR before a new Supra, but given the price differences, a leftover Supra is definitely a heck of a price as well. But I think that's about it for today's video. I love these cars so much. They're insanely fun. And if you're looking for a sports car, both of them are definitely where it's at. So give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Smash the subscribe button if videos like this are something you'd like to see. I'll see you guys next video.